Hi, and welcome back to episode 2 of my What Works For Me YouTube channel. My name is Rachel, and the first topic I'd like to dive into in this series, What Works For Me, is about my financial life. And I think the best way to kick it off is with my origin story financially. I grew up in a home where both of my parents worked, and my dad was in a physical job. My mom was in an office job, and there was a lot of tension around money growing up. My parents fought about money, and there was a definite sense of lack and definite sense of scarcity in my home. And that built into me a drive to make money and a drive to not need to ask anybody else for money and a drive not to depend on anybody else for money. Fast forward to college, and I graduated debt-free in 3 years. I did have a scholarship from the university I attended, but everything else was paid for by me with working. And most of the time I had 2 jobs through college. There was one period where I had 3 jobs and my body gave out, so I had to stop and go back to 2. But I graduated in 3 years with a bachelor's degree and no debt. Then I got married, and my ex-husband had an addiction problem that caused us to choose to use debt to pay for things. Even though I was afraid of debt because of the way that my parents had raised me. I was afraid of credit cards, loans, and all that kind of stuff. But desperate times call for desperate measures. And so I built up, because of my life with my ex-husband, a pretty good amount of debt. I think it was maybe $22,000 or $23,000. When I finally left the marriage, I moved away, I relocated, and had to start all over. So I started with, kind of reestablishing myself. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. When I was married to him and living in Houston, I was doing hair. I'd gotten a hair license after college. And when I moved back to Dallas, where I'm originally from, I started in my corporate career because I hadn't used my college degree yet. So I, again, worked 2 jobs to pay off my debt and became debt-free in my mid-20s. And then fast forward through my late 20s and early 30s, and I had some car debt, and I had some credit card debt that I had gotten myself. I did it myself. And I got married the second time, and my husband now and I, at first we didn't combine our finances. We just made sure that the bills were paid and then kind of did our own thing. And it wasn't until we encountered the Dave Ramsey program through some friends we made where we live now that all of that changed. So that's my financial origin story from a kind of a timeline perspective. What I can tell you from an emotional perspective that made going through the debt-free program and the Dave Ramsey steps, which I'll outline in coming episodes, so powerful was my emotional sense towards money. So growing up in a house where your parents fight about money, at least in me, instilled fear. So I was afraid of not having enough. I was afraid of people knowing I didn't have enough. And I was afraid of not having enough, meaning that I had to stay in situations I didn't want to be in. And so I kind of, until my 40s, had an incredible drive and an incredible value on the earning of money. And so I would wake up anxious because I didn't want anything to happen to my ability to earn income for no reason. There was no reason for me to be anxious about earning money because I had a proven track record of capability. I had never been unemployed for more than 2 weeks. Most of my life I'd had multiple jobs, and so my ability to earn there was no fact to back up the worry that I was experiencing, but I was still very anxious because it was really deeply rooted in me. I also didn't want anybody thinking I had any problems with money. So I would spend more than I had, or use credit cards to pay for dinner or prove that I could afford whatever it was I was doing, because I was so afraid of the pain and suffering that it could cause when you didn't have enough. And I learned to have this sort of knee-jerk reaction around treating myself and rewarding myself and buying the shoes anyway. And this impulsive desire to shop and this impulsive desire to have what I wanted when I wanted because I deserved it were all things that came out of not really understanding how money worked, or not really understanding how to keep what I made, because I didn't have a good savings practice throughout all of that. And so I think that where I came from was a very emotionally driven, knee-jerk reaction financial perspective. And that makes me so grateful for the journey that my husband and I went on. We use the Dave Ramsey program. There are a million financial education programs out there. So it's certainly not anything that you have to do this in order to get to a more solid place financially. But it is what carried me through the tactical practices and the emotional work to get to a much healthier place financially now. And I'll forever be grateful for that. And I think that was an important combination, because we know, you know that in order to have savings, you have to spend less than you make. That is not a difficult concept to grasp. But how many of us actually do it? And how do you know how to do it? How do you learn how to do it? Especially if your parents didn't talk about money, or if they only talked about money in a negative way growing up. You don't have any, and schools aren't really required to teach you that stuff. So it has to be a path that you follow yourself. And I'm so glad I did, because my feelings about money, my interactions with money, and planning for the future had such a shaky foundation until I followed these steps. So in the next coming episodes, I'll outline the big principles of each step that we followed to get to where we are now, which is debt-free since 2019. We have bought and sold a second home in that time, and traveled internationally, remodeled our home now, and all cash. And what did it take us? So I'm going to explain as I go through the individual steps what it took to get us from not paying for each month, actually being in the hole each month. The first time that we did a budget in 2017, we realized that we were about $500 in the hole every month, but because we got paid on alternating weeks, it didn't feel like that. But if you took what we actually spent versus what we actually made in a month, we weren't cutting it. From there, and the fear and panic that is, and I'll talk about that a lot more in my next videos, to having a 6-month emergency fund. So that when an emergency hits, which it inevitably will, it becomes an inconvenience because we've prepared. So I'm excited to share this journey. It has changed my life. It's changed my husband's life. It changed our marriage for the better. But I also want to set the baseline that I started from a place of fear. I was afraid to show him the debt that I brought into our marriage when we decided we were going to address it together. I had used payday loans to pay bills in the past because I didn't want to ask for help. That is a trap. That is a trap. I had times when I couldn't afford to pay gas, and I'd run out of gas and then have to call somebody to come help me out. So I started from a place that I have come very far from. I'm excited to share that journey with you. So the next several episodes of What Works for Me will be about my financial journey. And I hope you'll join me. Thanks so much.